This Read Aloud is brought to you by Walnut Middle School's Media Center.
All right. The story that I chose, I would rather have the whole book, but I only have this. It's Bailey's story, but the deal about this is the first part or the first story of A Dog's Purpose novel, and they made a movie about this. You'll be able to go see this. It's kind of a tearjerker in the fact that he comes to a family as a puppy, loves his boy, and he grows old and dies, and then he comes into being a puppy and goes into another family, and they have many books. He's a puppy to different families, but the stories are so heartwarming, and you have to realize that this story is written from a dog's perspective, and what I get such a kick about is being a dog's perspective. All the situations that he gets himself into, it's always the dog's perspective. And I just absolutely get to chuckling at this book. So I'll just get to start reading this for you. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I did, because I just really thought it was great. One day, it occurred to me that the warm, squeaky, smelly things squirming around next to me were my brothers and sisters. I was very disappointed. For a little while now, I had been pushing and shoving those wiggling objects aside so that I could get at my mother's furry warmth and her rich, delicious milk. So those things that had been getting in the way of my food were other puppies like me. I blinked at my mother, silently asking her to please get rid of the rest. I wanted her all to myself. But she didn't. It seemed that my brothers and sisters were here to stay. In that case, I decided I was going to be the one in charge. But my litter mates didn't seem to understand. I'll try to grab one of the back of their neck, and 2 or the 3 others would jump on top of me, and by the time I'd shake them off, the pup I'd been trying to teach a lesson would be wrestling with someone else, and if I tried a menacing growl, all my brothers and sisters just growled joyously back. So irritating. When I wasn't trying to make my litter mates understand how the world worked, I'd explore a little. From the first, I could hear a lot of barking, and I smelled other dogs nearby, and then I crawled out of a pile of siblings to see what I could see. The surface beneath my paws was rough and hard, and after a few steps, my nose bumped into a wire fence, and I was in a cage with a cement floor. On the other side of the wire, there were more puppies, and they were not blonde with dark eyes like my siblings and my mother and me. They were tiny, energetic little guys with dark markings and hair that stuck up all over the place, and they looked like they might be fun to play with, but that wire was between us, and when I turned around to look at the cage on the opposite side, I saw a female dog, white with black spots, and her belly hung down near the floor, and she moved very slowly. She gave me one glance, but it didn't seem very interested. On the third side of the cage, there was a door. I noticed that door before, and every day a man would come by with a bowl of food for my mother, but he'd open the door and put the food in, and she would get to her feet, shake off a puppy or 2, and gulp her meal down, coming back to us as quickly as she could. This was the first time I had taken a close look at what was beyond that door. Grass. A long strip of lawn that teased my nose with the smells of moist earth and growing things. Around the lawn was a wooden fence. It was all a lot to take in. I stumbled back to my mother and settled down for a nap on top of 2 sisters. The next day when the man came by, I was paying attention. He had a bowl of food in one hand and a piece of paper in the other, and he was frowning at it. Yorkshire Terriers, week or so, he said, looking in the cage next door, the one with the puppies. And then he stopped in front of our cage and peered inside. Golden retrievers, probably 3 weeks yet, and got a Dalmatian ready to pop any day. I can tell that he was not saying those words to any of the dogs. He never spoke to us. Quickly he opened the door of our cage, and I trotted over, eager to see what the green grass might feel like under my feet. But the man pushed me aside with a grunt, not very roughly, but not gently either, and he put the bowl down in front of my mother. Then he swung the door shut. I tried to get a taste of what was in that bowl, but my mother nudged me away with her nose. It didn't smell as nice as milk anyway. The man moved on, coming back with more bowls in his hand. He put the bowl of food down in the grass and went to the cage on our right. He opened the door, and then he did something that really surprised me. He left it open. The puppies with the wiry fur, terriers the man had called them, tumbled out onto the grass. "No, not you," the man said to their mother, pushing her back from the door. The way he pushed me, I watched jealously as those little fur balls romped all over the grass. Their mother whimpered quietly behind her closed door. The man walked away, leaving the yard by a gate in the wooden fence, while the puppies rolled on the grass and bit it and barked at it. One peed on it, and then everyone else, of course, had to sniff that spot carefully. And then one of the puppies discovered a bowl of food by falling face first into it. He came up with a snort, licked sticky brown gulp from his nose, and fell in it again. And all of his brothers and sisters crowded around and did the same thing. And after the food was gone, the puppies came over to our cage door to sniff us. I licked at the leftover food on their faces while one of my brothers stood on my head. And then they left us to run up and down the grass, barking, tipping, getting back up. I saw that there were more cages to the left and to the right, and the puppies raced down, sniffing the noses of every dog they could reach. I wished I could be out there with them. I had explored as much as I could inside our little cage. With its smells of mother and puppies, food and milk, I was ready for more. And when the man came back into the yard, he left the gate open behind him. I could see a tiny sliver of blue sky, green trees, and dark roadway beyond. Longing seized me, and there was something out there for me. I knew it, something important, something that I needed. If I were ever running free in the grass, I would head right out that open gate. I couldn't understand why the terrier puppies didn't, but they were all too busy wrestling. The man scooped up 2 puppies, one in each hand, and carried them out through the gate. He made 2 more trips for the rest, and then they were gone, and the yard was suddenly awfully quiet with all their tiny, high-pitched barks. Their mother put her paws on the gate and cried, and she dropped down to pace back and forth, and the man came by her cage and looked at her, but he didn't call out to her. He didn't speak to her, didn't reach inside to touch her. Somehow I knew that he could have done those things and that it would have helped ease her unhappiness, but he didn't. He just turned and walked away, and the sadness of that mother in the cage next door made me sad as well. I burrowed back into the pack of my brothers and sisters, safe against my own mother's warm side. But the thought of that gate into the outside world did not leave me. When our turn came to be let out onto the green grass some days later, I was ready. The man set down bowls of food for us, just as he'd done for the terriers, and he opened the gate to our cage, and we rushed out onto the grass. 2 sisters walked right over my head to get to the food bowls. I pushed my way between them and ate my fill. It was delicious, and it felt so satisfying to chew something solid instead of suckling milk. When my stomach was full, I lifted my head from the bowl and looked around me. Everything was wonderfully moist and full of smells, and the grass was succulent. The earth underneath it was rich and dark, and I snatched up a little and stuck my nose right into it, and I sneezed and shook my head to get the dirt off. I trotted over to the Dalmatian's cage, and her brand new puppies staggered over to the door. And this is a picture of the puppy mill, of course. I don't know if you can see that, but we all know what puppy mills are. There's lots of mommies and baby puppies, and they only grow to a certain point, and then they're adopted and they're gone. And that really isn't the point until he gets adopted. And I think I'll go on a little more. I wish I could get to... The next thing I knew, I was lying on soft grass while cool, clear water trickled all over me. From my nose to my tail, a woman stood over me holding a plastic jug. Nothing had ever felt so good. I shuddered with pleasure and lifted my mouth to lap and bite at the sweet stream. "That's right, puppy, that's right," the woman encouraged me. A man stood nearby, not the one who had left me in the truck. A different man. He was watching me closely. "Do you think he'll be okay?" the woman asked. "Looks like the water is doing the job," he answered. I felt worried from both of them, and affection and care. These were the kind of people I had set out into the world to find. I rolled over on my back so that the water would wash over my hot tummy, and the woman laughed. "Such a cute puppy. Do you know what kind it is?" "It looks like a golden retriever," the man answered. "And oh, he's a boy." "Oh, puppy," the woman murmured. Yes, I could be puppy, I could be fella, I could be whatever they wanted. When the woman swept me up in her arms, not even caring about the big wet splat my soaking fur made on her blouse, I kissed her face until she closed her eyes and giggled. "You're coming home with me, little guy," she told me. "I've got something I want you to meet." She took me away from the truck and into the car, holding me on her lap while she drove. I leaned into her, sniffing. She smelled clean, like soap and sweet like flowers, and there was an animal odor on her clothes, one I'd never smelled before. Now and then she took a hand down from the steering wheel to stroke me. Very nice. She stopped the car once and left me inside, which made me pace and whimper, but she left a window open an inch or so, and in a moment she was back. I cuddled on her lap again while she drove, until, feeling better, I heaved myself off to explore. 2 streams of clean, cold air flowed out of some vents into my face, and I sniffed them and shook my head, sending water splattering off my ears, and the woman laughed. The cold air on my wet fur was actually beginning to make me shiver, so I climbed down to the floor where it was a little warmer. There was a carpet down there, soft and rough at the same time, and I was ready to curl up for another little nap. I woke up when the car stopped. The woman reached down with those soft hands and picked me up, and I blinked sleepily at her. "Oh, you are so cute," she whispered. And as she held me against her chest, I could feel her heartbeat. She was excited. I yawned and shook off the last traces of my nap. And after she let me down, I squatted and peed in the grass, and I was ready to face whatever had this nice woman so worked up. "Ethan," she called, "come here. I want you to meet someone." I looked up at her curiously. We were in front of a big white house, and I wondered what I'd find here. Would there be cages, other dogs, a big yard with a wooden fence? The front door of the house banged open, and a human being came racing out. A new kind of human being. I'd never seen one like this before. He jumped down the cement steps and landed on the grass. His hair was dark like the woman's, but cut short above his ears. He was smaller than she was. His head didn't come up to her shoulders. He stared at me. I stared back. He was, I realized, a young human, a child, a male one. His mouth broke into a huge grin, and he spread out his arms. "A puppy," he sang. We ran to each other. He flopped down to pick me up, and I could not stop licking him. He could not stop giggling, and we rolled together in the grass. I hadn't known that there was such a thing as a boy in the world, but now that I had found one, I was sure that there could not be anything better. He smelled fantastic, of sweat and soap and mud and something meaty, and that he had been eating, and also of the same animal I'd smelled on the woman's clothes. I burrowed my nose into his hair and under the collar of his shirt and sniffed and sniffed. A boy. I think this is what I had been looking for when I stepped out of that yard. A boy like this. And here's a picture of him and his boy. And I think that's probably as much as I'm going to read. I read to where the two met each other, and it just gets better from there. Is that enough,
No,
Mr. Martin?
That is perfect.
Yeah. But anyway, they're making a movie of this, well, part of this book. And it's a wonderful book. Thank you for letting me read.
Thank you so much.